The galaxy was quiet. Too quiet. It wasn't the kind of silence that came after a storm or the calm before something big happened. This silence felt heavy, like the universe itself had taken a deep breath and decided not to let it out again. For decades, humanity had stretched its fingers across the stars, colonizing planets, building stations, and dreaming of endless possibilities. But now, all those dreams were fading into darkness. Earth hadn't spoken in years, and one by one, the colonies fell silent. The only thing left behind was an eerie energy field called the Veil, swallowing everything in its path. Cale Arden floated alone in their battered ship, the Ember Whisper. Once, Cale had been a soldier, proud and strong, wearing a uniform that gleamed under alien suns. Now, they were nothing more than a scavenger, picking through the wreckage of what used to be great. Their face bore scars from battles long past, and their eyes carried the weight of someone who'd seen too much but couldn't look away. They weren't heroes anymore. They were survivors. Eos, the ship's AI, kept Cale company. Unlike most AIs, Eos didn't speak plainly. Every word was wrapped in poetry, as if the machine had swallowed a library of old books and couldn't help but spill them out whenever it talked. Cale, Eos said one day, its voice soft yet strange. The stars do not blink because they are afraid of the dark. They blink because they have forgotten how to shine. Save your speeches for someone who cares, Cale muttered, leaning back in the pilot's chair. The controls in front of them flickered faintly, held together with wires and hope. Outside the viewport, space stretched endlessly. Cold and empty dot, but today, something caught Cale's attention, a faint signal coming from a derelict orbital station, drifting dangerously close to the Veil. Stations like this were usually dead, stripped clean by scavengers or abandoned when the Veil began its slow crawl across the galaxy. Still, signals meant something, maybe supplies, maybe answers, or maybe trouble. Either way, Cale needed both. They guided the Ember Whisper toward the station, the ship groaning in protest. As they approached, the station loomed larger, its metal skin pockmarked with age and damage. Lights blinked weakly on its surface, casting long shadows against the hull. Cale suited up, grabbed a toolkit, and stepped into the airlock. The hiss of decompression filled the tiny chamber as the outer door slid open, revealing the station's interior. Inside, the air was stale, thick with the smell of decay. Dust coated every surface, swirling lazily in the low gravity. Cale moved cautiously, their boots clicking softly against the floor. The walls were lined with panels displaying static-filled screens, remnants of a life once lived here. In the silence, Cale's breath echoed inside their helmet, steady but deliberate. Then they found it. Nestled in a corner of what looked like an old research lab was a shard, no bigger than Cale's hand. It pulsed faintly, glowing with an inner light that shifted colors like flames dancing in a hearth. Cale hesitated, staring at it. Something about it felt alive. Reaching out, they touched it gently, and the world around them changed. Visions flooded Cale's mind, images of towering beings wreathed in fire, their forms both beautiful and terrifying. They moved through cities made of glass and gold, their voices resonating like thunder. But then, the scene shifted. Flames erupted everywhere, consuming everything. The beings screamed, their cries echoing in Cale's ears until there was nothing left but ash and silence. "What is this?" Cale whispered, pulling their hand back. The shard stopped glowing, returning to its dormant state. Shaking off the unease, Cale slipped it into a pouch on their belt. Whatever it wasn't ordinary. And in a galaxy where ordinary things were scarce, extraordinary ones might just keep them alive a little longer. Back on the Ember Whisper, Cale placed the shard on the console, studying it closely. Eos chimed in, its tone unusually serious. That which burns brightest often leaves the deepest scars. Be careful, Kale. Careful doesn't pay the bills, Kale replied, though their voice lacked conviction. Deep down, they knew Eos was right. This thing, it wasn't safe. But safety wasn't exactly a luxury they could afford anymore. As they set course away from the station, Kale couldn't shake the feeling that they'd stumbled onto something far bigger than themselves. The shard seemed to hum faintly, almost imperceptibly, as if it were trying to communicate. And somewhere, out in the vastness of space, something or someone was listening. Little did Kale know, taking the shard had sent a ripple through the galaxy. Somewhere beyond the veil, ancient forces stirred, awakened by the faint echo of humanity's voice. Silence had reigned for millennia, but now someone had dared to speak in flames. The shard sat on the console of the Ember Whisper, its faint glow casting shadows that danced like restless spirits. Kale watched it warily, their mind replaying the visions it had shown them back on the station. The towering beings of fire, the city swallowed by flames, it all felt too vivid to dismiss as mere hallucination. Whatever this thing was, it wasn't just a piece of alien junk. It carried secrets, perhaps even answers about the veil and why the galaxy had gone silent. But it also brought unease, a gnawing sense that they'd opened something better left closed. Isis hadn't stopped talking since they returned to the ship. Its poetic ramblings grew more urgent, almost frantic. Flames consume but do not create, it said one moment. A spark can light a fire or burn down a forest, it added the next. Kale tried to tune it out, focusing instead on plotting their next move. Supplies were running low, and scavenging near the veil was risky business. Still, they couldn't ignore the shard. If it held value, someone out there might pay handsomely for it, or at least explain what it was. As the Ember Whisper drifted through the void, an alarm blared suddenly, jolting Kale upright. A ship had appeared on their scanners, small and battered like their own. It wasn't uncommon to encounter other scavengers in these parts, but something about this vessel felt different. Its design was sleek yet unfamiliar, suggesting it belonged to someone with resources far beyond Kale's reach. Hailing frequencies open, EIs announced unnecessarily. The com crackled to life, and a voice emerged, calm, measured, and dripping with authority. This is Lyra Voss. State your identity and purpose. Kale hesitated before responding. Kale Arden, just passing through. Lyra's tone shifted slightly, curiosity creeping in. Passing through? That's bold, considering where you are. You wouldn't happen to have found anything interesting recently, would you? Kale glanced at the shard, then back at the console. Depends on what you mean by interesting. There was a pause, long enough to make Kale uneasy. Finally, Lyra spoke again. I think we need to talk. Dock with my ship, alone. Something about her demand set off warning bells in Kale's head. But curiosity and the hope that she might know something about the shard won out. They maneuvered the Ember Whisper closer to Lyra's ship, a sleek craft named Ashen Horizon. The docking process was smooth, almost unnervingly so. And soon Kale found themselves face to face with the woman behind the voice. Lyra Voss was younger than Kale expected, with sharp features and piercing eyes that seemed to see right through them. Her hair was tied back in a tight braid, and her clothes looked practical yet expensive. She carried herself with confidence, the kind that came from knowing things others didn't. In her hand, she held a scanner pointed directly at Kale's pouch, the one containing the shard. You've got something I've been looking for, she said without preamble. Kale crossed their arms. And what makes you think I'll just hand it over? Lyra smirked. Because if you don't, you won't live long enough to figure out what it does. That gave Kale pause. You know what it is? I know enough, she replied cryptically. It's a key to understanding the veil, maybe even stopping it. Stopping it? Kale wanted to laugh, but the seriousness in Lyra's expression kept them silent. They studied her for a moment, weighing their options. On one hand, Lyra could be lying, trying to take the shard for herself. On the other, she might actually know something useful. Either way, Cale realized they couldn't afford to walk away empty-handed. "Fine," they said finally. "We'll work together for now. But if you're lying—" Lyra raised an eyebrow. "If I'm lying, you'll have bigger problems than me." Over the next few days, Cale and Lyra traveled deeper into the abandoned zones of the galaxy, following coordinates Lyra had pulled from old research logs. Along the way, Lyra explained what she knew about the Veil, or rather what she suspected. According to her, it wasn't just some random energy field. It was intelligent, possibly even alive. And it wasn't natural, it was a weapon. Designed by an ancient civilization to enforce silence across the stars. Cale listened, skeptically, but couldn't deny the evidence stacked against humanity's ignorance. Everywhere they went, they found ruins of civilizations that had once thrived. Entire planets reduced to ash, cities crumbling under layers of dust, monuments etched with symbols eerily similar to those on the shard. Each discovery painted a clearer picture. Whoever created the Veil had done so to snuff out noise, to punish those who dared disturb the cosmic quiet. But the shard itself remained a mystery. Whenever Cale touched it, strange things happened. Equipment aboard the Ember Whisper malfunctioned without explanation. Lights flickered, consoles sparked, and voices whispered faintly in languages Cale didn't understand. At first, they thought it was their imagination, stress playing tricks on their mind. But when EOS started acting strangely too, repeating fragmented phrases like burning whispers and flames remember, Cale knew it wasn't just them. Lyra noticed the changes as well. "Whatever that thing is," she said one evening, staring at the shard, "it's rewriting reality around us. We need to be careful." "Careful?" Cale shot back. "Careful won't tell us what it wants or why it chose me." "It didn't choose you," Lyra corrected sharply. "You took it. Now it's using you." Her words lingered uncomfortably in the air between them. Cale wanted to argue, to deny it, but deep down, they weren't sure she was wrong. The shard felt alive, aware, watching them even when they weren't looking. And every time they interacted with it, they felt a little less like themselves. Their journey eventually led them to a massive structure, floating near the edge of the Veil, a colossal spire made of black, obsidian-like material that shimmered faintly in the starlight. It radiated power, humming softly as if alive. Lyra called it a beacon, a remnant of the civilization that had built the Veil. Inside, she promised, they would find answers as they approached the spire. Cale couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The shard pulsed brighter with each passing second, reacting to the spire's presence. Lyra seemed tense too, her usual confidence replaced by a quiet determination. Neither of them spoke as they entered the structure, their footsteps echoing in the vast emptiness. The interior was unlike anything they'd seen before. Walls were covered in intricate carvings depicting scenes of fire and destruction. Statues of flame-wreathed figures stood frozen in poses of both triumph and despair. In the center of the chamber lay a pedestal, cracked and weathered, but still glowing faintly. The shard reacted violently when brought near it, sending waves of energy rippling through the room. Lyra worked quickly, scanning the pedestal with her equipment while Cale kept watch. But as the minutes passed, the atmosphere grew heavier, charged with tension. Then, without warning, alarms blared, and the ground shook violently. Something was coming. "We triggered it," Lyra shouted, grabbing her gear. "We need to leave now." But Cale hesitated, staring at the shard. It was glowing brighter than ever, its light pulsating in sync with the tremors shaking the spire. For a brief moment, they saw visions again, this time of the creators of the Veil, their fiery forms collapsing into ruin. A single phrase echoed in their mind, repeated endlessly. "You called us. Now burn, Kale!" Lyra yelled, snapping them out of their trance. Reluctantly, they followed her back to the ships, the spire collapsing behind them as they fled. Back aboard the Ember Whisper, Kale sat in silence, staring at the shard. They'd come seeking answers, but all they'd found were more questions, and the growing certainty that whatever they'd awakened, it wasn't done with them yet. The shard sat on the console of the Ember Whisper, its glow dimmer now but still alive, pulsing faintly like a heartbeat. Kale stared at it, their mind replaying everything that had happened since they'd taken it from the derelict station. Ruins of civilizations consumed by fire, whispering voices in languages they couldn't understand. The spire collapsing behind them as alarms blared and the ground shook violently. Kale wasn't sure what scared them more, the visions the shard showed or the feeling that it was somehow tied to them now, like it had marked them for something greater than they could comprehend. Lyra's words echoed in their head. "It's rewriting reality around us." Was that true? Or was she just trying to scare them into giving it up? Yes, the ship's eye hadn't been much help either. Its poetic ramblings had grown darker, almost desperate. "Flames consume not just wood but dreams," it said one moment. "The ember remembers the forest it burned," it muttered another. Kale tried to ignore it, focusing instead on keeping the Ember Whisper running, long enough to get somewhere safe or at least somewhere with answers. Lyra's ship, Ashen Horizon, drifted alongside them, her presence both comforting and unsettling. She knew things about the Veil, about the shard, but she wasn't telling Kale everything. Every time they asked her a direct question, she deflected, saying only that they needed to keep moving. That time was running out. But running out for what? Kale didn't press too hard. They weren't sure they wanted to know. They traveled deeper into uncharted space, following coordinates Lyra pulled from old data logs. It wasn't long before they stumbled upon another planet. This one scorched black, its surface cracked and lifeless. The air shimmered faintly, as if heat still radiated from the ground centuries after whatever catastrophe had struck. As they landed, Kale felt a chill despite the oppressive warmth outside. "This place is like the others we've seen," Lyra said, scanning the horizon with a handheld device. "But there's something different here. Something stronger." "What do you mean?" Kale asked, their voice tight. Lyra didn't answer immediately. Instead, she led them toward the ruins of an ancient city, its towering structures reduced to jagged skeletons reaching skyward. The carvings on the walls matched those they'd seen in the spire flames consuming figures, cities crumbling into ash. But here, the symbols were clear, almost fresh, as if time itself had avoided touching them. "It's a warning," Lyra said finally, her tone grim. This civilization, they didn't die because of war or disease. They destroyed themselves. Their technology was too powerful, and they couldn't control it. Kale frowned. "You're saying this is what happens when you mess with fire?" "No," Lyra corrected sharply. "I'm saying this is what happens when you don't respect it. Fire isn't just destruction. It's creation, balance. These people forgot that, and the Veil punished them for it." "Punished them?" Kale wanted to argue, to say that sounded ridiculous, but the evidence was all around them. Entire worlds reduced to ash. Civilizations erased without a trace. And now humanity was next, unless they figured out how to stop it. As they explored further, they found remnants of the beings who had once lived here. Statues of flame-wreathed figures stood frozen in poses of both triumph and despair. In the center of the city lay a massive obelisk, etched with symbols that glowed faintly when Kale approached. The shard reacted instantly, glowing brighter and vibrating in their hand. Words not spoken aloud, but felt deep within their chest, filled their mind. "Beware the flames that speak." Kale staggered back, clutching the shard tightly. Lyra rushed to their side, concern written across her face. "What did you see?" "I don't know," Kale admitted, their voice shaking. "It's like it's talking to me. Warning me. About what?" Before Kale could answer, the ground beneath them trembled violently. Dust fell from the sky as cracks spread across the surface, revealing molten rock glowing faintly below. From the fissures emerged drones unlike anything they'd ever seen, machines made entirely of liquid metal and fire, their forms shifting constantly as they advanced. "We need to go," Lyra shouted, grabbing Kale's arm and pulling them toward the ships. But the drones were fast, surrounding them before they could escape. Heat radiated off their bodies, scorching the air and making it hard to breathe. Kale clutched the shard tightly, unsure what else to do. If this thing had brought them here, maybe it could get them out. To their surprise, the shard responded. A wave of energy erupted from it, forcing the drones to retreat momentarily. The ground shook again, and the obelisk in the center of the city began to hum, its glow intensifying until it lit up the entire area. Lyra grabbed Kale's shoulder, shouting over the noise. "It's activating. We have to leave now." Kale hesitated, staring at the obelisk. They didn't want to run, not yet. Not while answers were so close. But the drones regrouped quickly, their fiery forms merging into larger, more menacing shapes. One lunged at them, and Kale barely dodged, stumbling backward. "Kale!" Lyra yelled again, her voice urgent. "If we stay, we die." Reluctantly, Kale followed her back to the ships, the shard pulsing wildly in their hand. As they reached the Ember Whisper, Lyra stopped suddenly, turning to face the advancing drones. "Go," she said firmly. "I'll hold them off." "What are you talking about?" Kale demanded, panic rising in their chest. "I activated the obelisk," Lyra admitted, her expression calm despite the chaos around them. "It'll buy you time, but someone needs to distract them. That someone is me." "You can't." "I can," Lyra interrupted, her voice softening. "And I will. You've got the shard. Figure out what it wants. Stop the veil before it reaches Earth." Before Kale could argue further, Lyra turned and ran toward the drones, drawing their attention away. Kale watched in stunned silence as she disappeared into the flames, her figure swallowed whole by the inferno. Then, with no choice left, they climbed aboard the Ember Whisper and launched into the sky, leaving the burning planet behind. Back in the safety of space, Kale sat alone in the cockpit, staring at the shard. It had saved them for now, but at what cost? Lyra was gone, sacrificed to give them a chance to escape. And though they'd learn more about the veil and the beings who created it, they still didn't know how to stop it. Eos spoke softly, breaking the silence. "Flames may destroy, but they also cleanse. Perhaps the truth lies in the ashes." Kale didn't respond. They weren't ready to think about truths or ashes or anything else. All they could focus on was the weight of the shard in their hand and the growing certainty that it wasn't done with them yet. Whatever it wanted, whatever it was leading them toward, it wasn't going to be easy. And somewhere beyond the veil, the galaxy waited, watching silently as humanity's fate hung precariously in the balance. Kale sat alone in the cockpit of the Ember Whisper, staring at the shard. Its glow had dimmed since they'd escaped the burning planet, but it still pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat struggling to stay steady. Lyra was gone, sacrificed to buy them time, and all Kale could think about was her final words. Stop the veil before it reaches Earth. But how? They didn't know enough. All they had were fragments, ruins of civilizations consumed by fire, symbols etched into stone, visions of ancient beings wreathed in flames. And this shard, pulsing quietly in their hand, as if waiting for something. Issa's voice broke through the silence. "Even embers hold warmth," it said softly. "Do not let grief extinguish your spark." Kale clenched their jaw, pushing aside the guilt and anger threatening to overwhelm them. Lyra had given her life so they could keep going. They owed it to her and to everyone else to figure out what the shard wanted. The coordinates Lyra had left behind led them deeper into the galaxy, closer to the veil itself. As the Ember Whisper approached, the energy field grew denser, its edges shimmering like liquid fire. It felt alive, watching them with an intensity that made Kale's skin crawl. Eos's systems acted up again, flickering erratically as if resisting some unseen force. Kale tightened their grip on the controls, determined to push forward. Finally, they reached the heart of the veil, a massive structure floating in the void, larger than anything Kale had ever seen. It looked like a fortress made of obsidian, its surface cracked and glowing faintly with veins of molten light. The shard reacted violently as they drew near, vibrating so hard it nearly slipped from Kale's grasp. "This is it," Kale whispered, more to themselves than to Eos. "Whatever's controlling the veil. It's here." They landed the ship cautiously, stepping out onto the structure's surface. The air crackled with energy, making every breath feel heavy. Ahead of them loomed a towering gateway, its frame carved with intricate patterns of flames and ash. Symbols identical to those on the shard glowed faintly along its edges. Pulsing in sync with the shard's rhythm, Kale hesitated for a moment, then stepped forward. As they approached, the gateway began to hum, its glow intensifying until it filled the entire area with blinding light. When the light faded, they found themselves inside a vast chamber, surrounded by walls that seemed to stretch endlessly upward. In the center stood a pedestal, similar to the one they'd seen in the spire, but this one was intact, glowing brightly. Without thinking, Kale placed the shard onto the pedestal. Instantly, the room came alive. Flames erupted around them, swirling in intricate patterns that formed shapes of towering figures. These were the beings Kale had seen in their visions, the creators of the veil. Their forms shifted constantly, part human, part fire, radiating power and destruction. A voice echoed through the chamber, deep and resonant, speaking directly into Kale's mind. "You have awakened us. Speak." Kale froze, unsure what to say. This was it, the moment they'd been dreading and seeking all at once. They took a deep breath, forcing themselves to focus. "Why are you doing this?" they asked, their voice trembling. "Why destroy entire civilizations?" The fiery figures shifted, their movements slow and deliberate. "Silence is survival," the voice replied. "Noise brings chaos. Chaos brings ruin." "But humanity isn't like that," Kale argued, desperation creeping into their tone. "We've learned. We've grown. Give us a chance." The flames roared louder, filling the chamber with heat. "Your kind speaks too loudly. Your creations scream across the stars, disturbing the balance. Silence is mercy. Silence is peace." Kale shook their head, refusing to back down. "Silence isn't peace, it's death. You're killing billions of people who never even knew you existed. How is that fair?" For a moment, the flames stilled, as if considering Kale's words. Then the voice spoke again, quieter this time. "Fairness is irrelevant. Balance must be maintained." "No," Kale said firmly, stepping closer to the pedestal. "Balance doesn't mean wiping out everything that makes noise. It means finding a way to coexist. If you destroy us, you'll just prove you're no better than the civilizations you claim to protect." The flames surged wildly, lashing out as if angered by Kale's defiance. But instead of retreating, Kyle stood their ground, clutching the shard tightly. "If you want silence, then take me. I'll burn for humanity. Let the rest live." The chamber fell silent, the flames freezing mid-air. For a moment, Kale thought they'd pushed too far, that the entity would strike them down without hesitation. But then the voice returned, softer now, almost contemplative. Sacrifice is rare among your kind. Rare and powerful. Before Kale could respond, the pedestal began to glow brighter, its light enveloping the entire chamber. The flames surrounding them shifted, forming a new shape, a colossal figure that towered over them, its face obscured by a veil of fire. "You offer yourself willingly," the voice said. "This act intrigues us." Kale swallowed hard, their heart pounding in their chest. They'd expected death, not curiosity. "What happens now?" they asked, their voice barely above a whisper. The figure raised a hand, its form rippling like liquid fire. "The veil will halt its advance for now. But know this, humanity is confined to its borders. Step beyond them again, and silence will fall." With that, the flames vanished, leaving Kale standing alone in the darkened chamber. The shard lay quiet on the pedestal, its glow completely extinguished. Exhausted but alive, Kale picked it up and made their way back to the Ember Whisper. As they piloted the ship away from the structure, Ia spoke softly. "Sometimes, the bravest words are spoken not with sound, but with sacrifice." Kale didn't respond. They stared out at the stars, knowing they'd bought humanity a reprieve, but also knowing the cost of breaking the rules again. The galaxy held its breath, listening for the next voice brave enough to speak in flames. Kale sat in the cockpit of the Ember Whisper, staring out at the stars. The shard lay on the console in front of them, lifeless and cold. It had stopped glowing after their confrontation with the veil, as if all its energy had been drained. Kale felt the same way, empty, exhausted, but also strangely relieved. They'd done it. Humanity wasn't going to be wiped out yet, but the victory didn't feel like one. The veil had agreed to stop expanding. Humanity was trapped, confined to the edges of the galaxy. Earth and its colonies were safe, but they couldn't grow, couldn't explore beyond the borders the veil had set. Silence was their punishment, their prison. And Kale couldn't help but wonder how long that silence would last before someone else tried to break it. Eos spoke softly, breaking the quiet. "Even in stillness, echoes remain. What will you do now?" Kale sighed, leaning back in the pilot chair. "I don't know," they admitted. "We bought some time, but what good is time if we can't use it?" Eos didn't answer right away, its circuits humming faintly. Then it said, "Perhaps time is not meant to be used but understood." Kale frowned, turning the words over in their mind. Time. Understanding. Maybe Eos was right. Maybe the key wasn't in fighting the veil, but in learning why it existed in the first place. The beings who created it, the fiery figures who had judged Kale, they weren't monsters. They were enforcers, guardians of balance. But balance for whom? For what? As the Ember Whisper drifted through space, Kale replayed everything they'd seen and heard. The ruins of civilizations consumed by fire, the spire filled with warnings, the obelisk on the scorched planet. All of it pointed to one truth. The veil wasn't just a weapon. It was a consequence, a reaction to something far greater, perhaps even a mistake, made by those who came before. Kale's thoughts turned to Lyra. She'd sacrificed herself so Kale could escape, so they could figure out how to stop the veil. But stopping it wasn't the answer. Humanity couldn't fight fire with fire, not against something so vast, so ancient. Instead, maybe they needed to find a way to coexist, to prove they could live without disturbing the balance. But how? How could billions of people learn to stay silent when their nature was to speak, to build, to reach for the stars? Kale didn't have the answers. All they had was the shard, now dark and useless, and the memory of Lyra's final words ringing in their ears. Days passed as Kale guided the Ember Whisper back toward human territory. The journey was slow, the ship battered and worn from its travels. Supplies were running low, and Kale's body ached from exhaustion. Still, they pressed on, driven by the need to deliver the message they brought back from the veil. When they finally reached the edge of known space, they found what remained of humanity clinging to survival. Colonies were struggling, resources scarce, hope even scarcer. News of Earth's silence had spread, leaving many to wonder if their homeworld was even still there. Kale landed on a small outpost orbiting a dying star, its inhabitants wary but curious about the stranger. Arriving in a patched-up ship, word spread quickly that Kale had returned from beyond the veil. People gathered in the outpost's central hub, their faces pale with fear and anticipation. Kale stood before them, the shard held tightly in their hand. "I've been where none of us should go," Kale began, their voice steady despite the weight of what they were about to say. "I've seen the ruins of civilizations that burned themselves out. I've spoken to the force that watches over us, waiting to silence us if we step too far." A murmur rippled through the crowd, questions bubbling up like steam. Kale raised a hand to quiet them. "The veil isn't just an enemy. It's a warning, a reminder that noise brings destruction. If we want to survive, we need to listen to understand what silence truly means." "But how?" someone shouted from the back. "How do we live without reaching for more?" Kale hesitated, searching for the right words. "We start by remembering what we almost lost, by honoring those who gave everything to keep us alive." Their gaze lingered on the shard, thinking of Lyra, "and by proving we're worthy of the second chance we've been given." The room fell silent, the weight of Kale's words settling over everyone. For the first time in years, there was no arguing, no shouting, just quiet reflection. In the days that followed, Kale traveled to other colonies, spreading the message they brought back from the veil. Some listened, others refused to believe. But slowly, a change began to take root. People started working together, conserving resources, finding ways to thrive within their limits. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. Back aboard the Ember Whisper, Kale stared at the shard one last time. It was dead now, its purpose fulfilled. But Kale couldn't bring themselves to throw it away. Instead, they placed it in a small compartment near the console, a reminder of what they'd faced and what they'd fought for. Eos spoke again, its tone softer than ever. "Even ashes carry the promise of new flames." Kale nodded, though they weren't sure they believed it. The galaxy was still quiet, its stars dimmed by the shadow of the veil. But somewhere, deep inside, Kale held on to hope. Hope that humanity could learn, that they could find a way to live without burning themselves out. As the Ember Whisper drifted through the void, Kale whispered a single phrase into the silence. "Let the embers rest for now."